All right. Well, good afternoon. This is Peter here. I'm with Sales Your Way Consulting. I help freelancers and co-founders do sales their way. And I'm here with a longtime friend and coach of mine, Isabel. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Well, as you said, my name is Isabel Hunt. Last name. I'm a certified transformation coach, emotions clearing practitioner, author, and today, Amazon best-selling author, co-author, which is awesome. We made it.
Nice.
And I usually, or most of the time, my individual clients, I work with empaths and empath warriors. Those are highly, highly sensitive, to help them escape, or not escape, to find the balance between the extro and the introvert boxes that they find themselves in. But I also teach and coach on the topic of emotions.
Yes. And I can say, too, for my audience that happens to be listening to this, I had hired Isabel to be my coach, from 5 years ago now.
I think it's been a while, yeah.
Something like that, when there was a time I was feeling pretty lost and not sure what I was supposed to be doing or who I was anymore. And you helped walk me through that that time of my life, and made a big difference, and some big changes came. And so it's kind of fun to have this conversation with you here today. So thanks for taking time out of your day to participate.
Thank you for having me.
So what we're going to talk about today is there's a topic that you see kind of thrown around a lot. I used to have on mindset or mindfulness, and people talk about you got to have the right mindset, or you've got to be mindful, and a lot of different ways that that's being applied to business, to sales, to personal development. And so in your practice, when you think about mindfulness or having a good mindset, what does that mean, and how do you kind of work in that space?
Well, mindfulness, it's the new fashion word, right? It seems to be like everyone suddenly, it's so funny when I look at some coaches that were like technical coaches, and suddenly they teach all about mindfulness, and I'm like, doesn't quite fit with you, but all right, just keep going. It's good. I mean, if you implement it and not just teach it, it's great. But when it comes to mindfulness, I don't actually use the word very often, because again, I teach about emotions, but emotions and mindfulness is very much connected. If you want to have a picture of what the mind is and what it actually means to be mindful, there's a guy, his name is Dr. Craig Hendricks. He created that picture of what it means to be mindful. And he compared it with a book. So he said the book itself is the mass. Like, here's a book. The book itself is the mass. It's the material that is your brain and your nervous system, right? And the content inside of that book is compared to the mind. So the power of the book, the power of your physical body and your mentality and your overall being pretty much depends or is determined by its content. So when we talk about mind, it is pretty much about what you feed yourself with. What are the thoughts that you have? What are you buying into? When it comes to society, are you comparing yourself with specific people? I think mindfulness, to say it short, is pretty much finding your own path.
So I think back on my own journey, and there was just a time in my life I went through a few different crises of different situations, and so I kind of got into a survival mode and just kind of going through day to day and just really distracting myself with a lot of different things. And it wasn't until I got to almost a breaking point where I realized I just can't keep going in this direction, and I had to make some changes. I went down kind of the Western medicine route with that for a little bit, and I took some anxiety medication, and that kind of helped clear the fog to realize, oh yeah, there's some things I need to do differently. But for me, finding meditation was really kind of a big spot, so I could kind of clear the space in my head to kind of be more aware of my thoughts and things that I'd been distracting myself from. And so I would ask you, when you start working with clients, you start working with people, where are they typically at, and what's kind of getting in the way of them really being mindful or being clear about who they are, what their emotions and things are happening with them?
Yeah. Well, for one, from my personal experience and my own opinion, when I take a look at people and they're in that spot where you're at, especially now that, I mean, 5 years ago when we worked together, I think still a huge jump to where I'm at today. There's been a lot of studying just from that small period of time.
Hmm.
And you know it. I mean, we continue to work on a consistent basis. So you know that where I grew myself a lot.
Yeah.
But I think when I take a look at it, it's going back to and the way our society is being established, how authority is trying to control our willpower in buying stuff, in how we respond to certain things, how we are supposed to act and to react and to interact with people. There's a whole system out there, how we are supposed and should and could be doing things, right? So what gets in the way of being mindful is actually buying into that system. And again, mindfulness and mindset is very closely connected to your emotional world. And so from that system that we have created in our society, there's that bad and good emotions. Like, this is what you should be doing. This is what you should be feeling. This is okay. This is not okay. This is appropriate. This is not appropriate. And literally, we grow up that way. How often have you heard as a child when your mom asks you, what is wrong, sweetie? Even though they meant it with the best intent possible. But it just gives you that signal, what I'm feeling right now. That might be sad. It might be angry. There's something wrong with me. Obviously, I shouldn't be feeling this way. And we try so hard to have everyone be happy around us, especially children. They are not allowed to have a bad day because they're children. They shouldn't have a bad day, right? That was so sarcastic. But it's it's really interesting how we are buying into all those shoulds and how things should be going. So what gets in the way is to actually acknowledging what you feel on a daily basis and have it be okay, knowing that there is nothing wrong with you the way you feel. It is just what we just have to shift and switch literally is how we relate to what we feel to become more mindful. And that is often the way that that is often the thing that gets in the way for people to really access mindfulness and to really even understand what that means.
Yeah, so it's a small shift in language, but it becomes really powerful, right? When we start to think about how should I feel? Is this good or bad? You know, those three words, when you kind of anchor your emotions in them, it can bring about number one, I think, a sense of guilt and shame. Oh, I shouldn't be feeling sad right now. I shouldn't be feeling angry right now. And so that guilt and shame makes you want to avoid it even more, versus when you just start to accept, you know, I'm feeling upset, or I'm feeling sad. And then being able to kind of pull back from that, you can become the observer a little bit more rather than just kind of being trapped in it.
Yep, exactly. And then you start to reflect more in how you respond, in how you respond to yourself and how you respond to other people, how you create your relationships. All of those becomes more of a reflection than an actual reaction. And we tend to take things less personally, like when we interact with someone and they're upset. Most of the time we take that personally, but in that case, we stop taking it all personally and we can take a step back and just be more in that space of observation. And therefore we connect on a much deeper level with each other because we tend to judge less.
Right. So I think too, a big issue with this is, you know, in our society, there is a lack of integration, I guess, probably between how people would look at things that are mindful or mindset and, you know, what people do on a day-to-day basis, whether it's their career, their vocation, or their hobbies, or, you know, whatever. There's kind of that wedge that kind of gets in between, and like, oh, I'm at work now, so this stuff about, you know, like meditation or being mindful or whatever you want to call it, that doesn't really apply here because I'm working. You see a lot of that with the people you work with.
That's, well, yeah, you hear it all the time. You leave your work stuff at work and your family stuff at home. And then people start to wear different masks in different occasions and locations. And I think that is what hurts us because we're no longer authentic, meaning we're no longer really honest with the people that are in front of us. And we see it on the online world too, where everyone is just happy and great and, oh, I have this awesome life. And when you actually talk to them, you're like, oh, your business is actually not going that well, or you're actually not feeling so great. And there's just this honesty. I talked about vulnerability the other day, and a lot of people, what it comes down to is actually being vulnerable, being authentic, is going back to being honest with yourself as well as with the people around you. And when you separate all that, it doesn't quite work. You always just play a role. It's like you're an actor going to work,
Yep.
Instead of just integrating all of who you are in all aspects of your life.
Right. So what's one of the biggest misconceptions that you come across when working with people, or one thing that if people are going to understand one thing about this topic, what would it be?
It takes time. I think people always talk about miracles and the magic is happening once you change your mind. Well, you have to rewire your brain too, and that takes a little while before your brain actually realizes, oh, that's the new way of being and doing. Awesome. I think I can get used to that. Until then, it really just throws the red flag every time you're trying something new, because it's new. It's outside of your comfort zone because it is new. So it's outside of your comfort zone. Duh.
Yep.
And your brain is responding like, oh, wait a second, that's new. I don't think I can handle that. And there are all kind of emotions coming around that topic. Then you just feel kind of anxious, maybe even, or it's not working. You get upset, you get angry. And anger, like we've talked about that. Anger is about boundaries and about growth. That's when anger usually shows up. So it's actually not bad. It's really good to experience anger, because we know that's when we're growing, when we need to reset our boundaries internally as well as externally. And so the biggest misconception really is it's a magic pill. I see that like so many people talk about it and then they think their whole life is going to change just in an instant. And that's not how it goes. It's a constant practice every single day, every single minute of the day. And it doesn't mean that it adds more work to it. It's just becoming more of the observer. Like you said, stepping back. Now I have something in my eye. Stepping back and just reflecting on things like, hey, what I'm doing right now, is that in alignment with where I want to go with my bigger goals? And what I want to buy into, especially if you're an entrepreneur, we tend to buy into all those really awesome programs, and there's some really great ones, but there are also some that are not necessarily for you. And you still want to buy into it because people tell you that this is what you need to do. But if you really tune in with yourself and have that reflection, like, hey, is that actually really what I need to do right now? Like for me, it's now really easy. People don't have to sell me anymore. If I know and resonate with that person and really resonate with where they're at right now and what I need for my business and my growth, I buy it. It doesn't matter how much it is. I come up with the money somehow, or it just shows up somehow. That's another really awesome thing, because you understand that you can trust that you're provided for and what you need. And if that is what you need, you're provided for. If you just buy into things, you buy into things and you lose money and you struggle financially. And that's, you can practice that with those little things, just really tuning in with your intuition, trusting yourself, and staying on your path. And again, that doesn't just happen by, oh, I'm going to take a course on mindfulness today, and tomorrow my life is going to be changed. It's not going to happen.
Yep. So you talking about that prompted me to look up something. I shared it in your group the other day, but when I did some content on goal setting a few weeks ago, one of the pieces of content was this creative goal setting workbook. It was like a 30-page document, and I scanned through it to find something I could take an image of to share, kind of as a teaser if someone wanted to read the rest of it. And so I took this image, shared a quote of it, put it out there on Twitter. And a week and a half later, I got a message from a colleague of mine on Twitter who he'd shared this thing 4 or 5 times with other people and found it beneficial. He shared it back with me. And it was right at the same time where I had just booked a trip to Thailand for my business. That was something that I had been, envisioning for a while. And on that day was the day that this trip was being manifest, when I was hoping it would have happened a year ago. And so I want to read it in this video, and we can talk about it. But metaphysical law, there is order, there is purpose. Everything happens in the right order, at the right time, in the right place, for the right reasons, for the right beings. Therefore, I am doing the right thing always. My purpose is happening now. I am trusting in what I am doing and where I am going. I have faith in my timing and purpose as I create my reality now. And then this part right here, I just love this last sentence. I am enjoying my progress in materializing my dreams. So just like what you were saying earlier, to kind of trust where you're at, what you're feeling, how you are right now is the right thing, what you need right now, and what are you learning and how you're growing from it, right?
Yeah, it's an interesting journey because it's a lot about trust, and it often doesn't go as fast as we want it to. Or suddenly in an instant things change and you feel like you're not prepared for it. Um, it's quite interesting just to be able to roll with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen it where I had months where nothing happened and I was just like, what am I doing wrong? What is going on? Like, this is not happening. This is not working. I don't think I'm supposed to do that. And then like right now, it's like those big influencers actually reaching out to me and asking me if I want to be on their show. And I'm like, I don't think I can handle that. They're too big. I can't do that. I don't know what I'm supposed to talk about there. But it's that's going back. Like I know that is my default thinking often. And then I go back and I'm like, nope, it is all meant to be. It's all part of your path. You literally manifested all of that right into your life, and it's coming into your life because you're ready to receive it. And so you know you can handle it. And so it's really interesting to trust. And that's part of your mindset, to trust in the process and to trust yourself and your own abilities. And even if you're not in that moment clear on what you're supposed to say or what you're supposed to do, how often? Okay, so I was, the biggest interview I've done so far, you know, that was Entrepreneur on Fire with John Lee Dumas, right? Yeah. I went on this interview and I looked at some of the questions, like, I don't quite know what to say to those questions, but I'm just going to sweat through it. It's going to work. It's going to happen. And before every single interview, even this one, I pray over the interview and I just ask that God speaks through me and that I can find the right words. And every single time, just that little trust factor, the interviews work out really well. There have been only maybe one or two that didn't work out so well, but that was different reasons, which is not really the chemistry, I guess. But in general, it just comes. Like, I was so nervous that I would say the wrong things. I mean, he has millions and millions of downloads every day, and I just like, I can't say the wrong things. I mean, there are a lot of people, influential people that listen to it too. And it just came. Like, I literally, when I re-listened to it, I don't even remember that I said that. It just came out of me. And that's that trust factor where sometimes we feel we always have to prepare for everything.
Right.
But if we would just trust and show up, it just comes.
Amen. Well, we can, and maybe we should do a whole conversation just on expansion and growth sometime and what that looks like.
Yeah.
It'd be a really interesting conversation. So as you were talking to, one of the things that just came up to me, it's almost like there's an awareness problem with people, right? They've been so distracted, so desensitized, so what's the word for it? You tend to just kind of lose yourself in whatever it is that you're trying to kind of distract yourself in. What is it that, do you think there is an awareness problem that people don't even aware that they're kind of lost or struggling, or that this is even an issue for them, or are people aware of it and they just ignore it, or what do you think about that?
Well, if you take a look at the bigger picture, if you look at a global society in general, our main goal is to feel safe and to feel integrated. We all want to be part of something bigger. We want to have a meaning within that something. And we haven't quite understood that safety needs to come from within to really find that bigger movement that we can be part of, that we can stand behind and say, this is what I stand for, this is what I support, and this is what I'm going to do. We're still so afraid to stand out and to not that fear of not being part of something, of not being part of that society, like white, black, gay, not gay, like all those labels that we put, those boxes, we almost want them because it gives us a place to be. This is where I belong. This is what I identify with. And we have learned, we're being taught that in school in general, that our identification depends on the status that we have, the background, the family that we were born into, the education level that we have, and that's what we identify with.
Yep.
And I think that's the problem is that we try to find that place of safety on the outside. Through material things. We feel safe when we have a house. We feel safe when we have enough food. We feel safe when we have friends. We feel safe when we have a support system. But at some point, we have all that. And there's nothing that we add to that. Like at this right now, I think that's why we're experiencing that shift. We have all that.
Right.
There's not really anything that wouldn't cover that need or that couldn't be covered. Right. Even if you're homeless, there is opportunities or people that could potentially support you. A lot of people don't because they're so afraid about their own safety. If I give you, do I have enough? Right? So I think it's going back now to finding that safety place, that safe space that we can really go to every time we're stepping out. If it's in business or in your personal life, that is coming from within. And I think we can only access that through spirituality. We're not talking about organized religion. We're really talking about spirituality, connecting to your heart, connecting to your soul. Yes. And of course, we can talk about that even more. Why the heart and why this is even on a physical level important for us to understand, but that would take too long. But
that's just a whole other conversation. So
we're just taking it as it is right now. That's right. So that deeper connection where we can really be more reflective instead of reactive. And I think that's the problem in our society. We all want to belong. We all want to be part of something that we just buy into it, whatever is being presented, where we feel somehow important. We want to be seen. We want to feel important. And no matter if you like the group that you were put in,
yep.
You can rebel against it, but at the same time, subconsciously, you kind of like it because, again, you have a purpose within that group, even if it's like protesting against something or if it's calling out injustice. It still gives you a purpose. But again, every single one of that creates a me versus you, us versus them. And that is what destroys us as a society.
Yeah, and so as you're talking about that, maybe this is a mental note to myself. Maybe this is a call out if someone listens to this and they want to know more about it, or something for me to remember to write something more about this later. But I've read a lot of stuff by Eckhart Tolle, by Richard Rohr and Rob Bell, and different thinkers along that line that talk about that very thing, how the ego gets constructed, and we kind of build this container around our identity. And some of it we do consciously, and some of it just kind of gets thrown on us as we're born and kind of getting to where we are today. So just how to understand that and how to kind of step back from it and kind of see yourself as part of a bigger thing. So when someone gets to this point where they start to have, I would call it an awakening, there's more to this than kind of what I'm kind of swimming through day to day. And they say, okay, I want to know more about this. I want to get started. What's one practical thing or one place where you would say, start here?
Well, it kind of depends on the individual and where they're at. I'm not sure if it's smart to give general advice, because everyone, like general advice might be great, but it just doesn't help. But in general, I would think one thing is to become a minimalist. If you feel like there's a fire on my heart and I feel like there needs to be some changes happening in my life and there's just something different, I don't really care. One thing that I realized, the more you're tapping into spirituality, the less you feel you need, the less you go for anything that covers up your emotions, like drugs, food, anything else that usually would numb you. So I think it's that place of looking around. What is it actually that I really need physically? Do I need that chair? Do I need this big house? Can I downsize a little bit? Do I need all those books? Or are there some books that I actually don't even resonate with anymore? Who knows? Does my kid need all those toys? That's what we do on a regular basis. We go through our closets. Is it really something that I need? If not, I can get rid of it. So if you are finding yourself in that awakening stage, the first thing is to take a look at what is it that I need and what can I get rid of physically? And then like stuff, materialism, and then taking a look at your mindset. One exercise that I give to clients in general is for them to monitor their emotional state for about 1 or 2 weeks, where they have a journal and they write down already in the morning how they feel. For example, if you feel happy, you write that down. Just got up, feel really excited for the day. And then maybe after you take a shower, you sound like, I feel anxious and I feel like there's panic coming up. I realized the thought that triggered that was my to-do list for today, or there were expectations put on me from my boss or from my colleagues. And you can write those down and monitor that throughout a week or 2 weeks. It can get a little bit overwhelming if you're someone who has crazy, crazy thoughts all day and it's going nuts, but stick with it. You don't have to write everything down, just whatever you feel like. It needs to work for you. And then take a look after those 2 weeks and see what is the pattern, what are the thoughts that create certain emotional reactions, and very easily you can see patterns that are happening. And then usually when I have people look at the thoughts that they were thinking in that moment, I have them create the opposite affirmations. Like, for example, if your anxiety came up because I don't think I can live up to the expectation of my boss, you can create an affirmation that says, I am good enough. I have all that it takes to be successful in what I do. And so you write all those affirmations out, and every time you realize another emotional reaction is coming up in a specific situation, you can get out your affirmations like, I have everything I need. I have everything that I need to be successful in this moment, right here and now. And eventually you start to rewire your brain, and you start to, this is starting to become your truth. Mm-hmm. It's a really interesting exercise. Some people probably shouldn't do it on their own. Like, it's good to have a support system, even if it's just your husband or your wife, or if you do hire a coach, to go through that, because sometimes a lot more can be revealed through this process, which is necessary because a lot of it needs to be let go of. Right. But it's a great start to just start awareness somewhere and to say, oh, here's where I'm sabotaging myself. Oh, here's where I have those limiting beliefs about what I'm supposed to do. Here's where I question everything I do. Is that how I want this to go? Or do I want to actually feel different? Because you need to remember, with everything you do, with everything you think, with everything you believe, you have a choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, just to piggyback on that as a closing thought from my side, is when you start to identify those things and write them down and be aware of them, and then also get that external perspective from someone that you trust, it helps you to kind of detach yourself from, the right or wrong of what you're feeling. It's more of an objective, I am feeling this right now. Yeah. And when you take that to that outside perspective, then they start to help you understand, well, maybe, okay, so maybe that wasn't really how I was feeling, or, something with that where your mind goes to create this story about whatever it is, that not all of that is necessarily true. And so you can learn to manage those negative thoughts, those negative emotions, those things that are kind of keeping you in a place that, you don't need to be long-term. You can help get out of that when you get outside of your head with it.
Yeah. And the basic is to change your relationship that you have to your emotions. Like, instead of experiencing fear as something that gets in the way, or that you have to push through or overcome or avoid, you can honor it for what it is. Oh, okay, I'm stepping outside of my comfort zone. What is the next action that I need to take that I'm not taking? What are the actions that I have been avoiding that I know I'm supposed to take? Or what actions did I take that I probably shouldn't have been taking because they had me go backwards again? There are always those really awesome reflective questions. And I don't know. Yeah, we talked about that with my course. The Empowered Warrior is a simple guide to successfully navigating your emotional world, where I give people to each emotion specific set of questions that they can reflect on. And with that, they can actually see each emotion, no matter what it is, as something like a tool that you can take out of your toolbox, and you can use it to move forward on your path, not everyone else's path, but your path. And it gives you a peace of mind. And it feels very freeing and very accelerating, and I don't know how to describe it. There's just such an inner peace when you can have such a high sense of reflection to what's going on inside of you.
Yeah. I'm gonna close out with a thought. I'm a big fan of Zen pencils, and it's an artist that he started doing his own comics with inspirational speeches. I printed out one of them. Well, I ordered a poster for one and framed it, and it's in my it's in our dining room at my house. But it's a poem by Rumi, The Guest House, and so I'm going to put a link to this when I put this in places. But it's this: being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house. Empty of its furniture, still treat every guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door, laughing, and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond.
Yes.
So for me, that's a good reminder.
That before, but it's perfect. Yes.
Yeah. It's a good reminder for me each day, the good and the bad, whatever it is, it just is. It's something that's been brought to me in that moment from something outside of myself, and just to welcome it in and honor it for what it is at that time.
Yes.
So
I absolutely agree with it.
Well, thank you very much for your time today. I appreciate you coming and talking about mindfulness and mindset. And we've got 2 other topics queued up to talk about now from our conversation today. That will maybe.
We in general could talk for hours anyways, but we don't want to do that to the audience. So it would be a little too long.
Yeah.